for most years of my career, each job was a triumph. Getting that job, being cast, having time with that role, sometimes having it go well, other times wishing it had gone better. But the point is, always the work was the attraction, and that I have the extraordinary good fortune of these roles now. It's a dream come true, really. And staying deeply positive, deeply positive. It's all possible. There's room at the table for all of us.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Ann Dowd is an actor. She sat down with me in a restaurant in Chelsea to talk about the work.
How do you begin your process with the script?
I would say reading quietly again, and then reading it again. My husband he's an actor as well, has a way of doing things that he got from a British director. I forget who it was, I'm sorry. But it's a very important one, which I sometimes do, which is the creating of 4 lists, which are, what are the incontrovertible facts? In other words, not based on opinion.
Yeah.
What do I say about myself? What do I say about others? What do others say about me? Character. That keeps one's subjective thoughts from protruding and getting in the way of really knowing what the writer has in mind.
Yeah.
Which I think is very important. It's not what you want the character to be about or what you wish it was about. It's what it is about.
Yeah.
And then, there are the basics of what does the character want? What's in the way? What's the character going to do to get what she wants? The more I do it, the clearer it becomes to keep things simple, honest, straightforward, and the clarity is huge. When I was a pre-med student for 4 years in college with the intent of going to medical school, that's a very challenging program, and it is about time in, time in, time in. There are exact answers to these questions. This is science.
Yeah, right.
And so when I made the decision as a senior to go to acting school, what I didn't shift was my way of thinking about how to approach something you want, which is to be a better actor, say, or to do well in the sciences, say, in pre-med. So there was a pressure I applied very strongly to complete method, time in and more time, and there was just an anxiety attached to it that I just took with me from pre-med and applied it to. And the longer I'm in it, the more I realize that the initial things that bring us into wanting to be an actor in the first place, the joy of stepping into the make-believe, the joy of coming to know another character without pressure, is hugely important. It took me years to remember that you come with those desires, and if they're going to stand the test of time, and that's how you know I want to be an actor or I don't, then let them be. So as in any relationship, I think the golden rule for learning about a character is no judgment. That's been particularly helpful with Lydia.
Yeah.
That's second nature by now, knowing I want to know who these people are, and like a relationship, if judgment is in the picture, then there'll be no revelation of who one really is, because it'll be too guarded. Lydia's not going to tell me about herself if I'm saying, excuse me, you're a little rough, aren't you? So it's, again, the reading and just reading it again, not placing judgment, not having opinions about it, and trying to just clarify what the writer has in mind. Also, then the work of personalizing. What do I have in common with this person? What do I naturally understand about her? Because keeping it real, and I'm a big fan of keeping it personal. I mean, I say that in quotes. We should all be so lucky to take it personally. Meaning, not to the point where we don't remember, hey, we're in a story here, we're in a make-believe situation. But just, it's happening to me.
Yeah.
Do you know?
Yeah.
There's a couple things in there that are so interesting that I want to ask. You're saying you're bringing your anxiety from the pre-med thing into What did you mean by anxiety?
I have to understand it now. I have to know who she is now.
I see, okay.
If I put in 8 hours today when I get home and just go over it and over it and over it, then I'll know her. Just, and the comparison would be, if you spend several hours after an organic chemistry class reviewing your class notes, that's going to benefit you tremendously.
Yes, 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 yes.
But time in is important for working on a role, but you can't apply that kind of pressure. These characters, in my opinion, live, and our role is to bring them to life. What would I do if I were that person in this situation? It's learning to know who another is, and it's going to go through your filter, your psyche. So it's the blending of the two, but it can't be insistence. I need to have it now. Sometimes you won't know about a character until the end.
You're saying, though, there's a fine line between tying it down too much, like doing the work on it the same way you would on a paper or something, putting that kind of effort. If you're tying it down too much, you can't breathe.
That's a really good way of putting it. It's not actually what I meant, but I love that. I think what I meant is, you're going to have to, let's talk about television for an example, which moves very quickly, as does film, really, compared to theater, in which it is the process of rehearsal, of choices that shift, and so on and so forth. At some point you narrow them down and you commit. But there's time to work through it. You have to make decisions on the day, say in television or in film. And and they have to be clear, and you have to commit. What I meant by the anxiety is, oh, what if it isn't exactly right, good enough, or oh, what if it isn't, creating anxiety. I think the direction is make your choices, do your homework, make those decisions before you come on set, though you're open to what might happen, which often does shift your choices, but just to leave the panic and the worry and the self-absorption of, can I do it well enough? That just doesn't serve in the end. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes, yes.
And I think perhaps that's a gift of aging, perspective. But there are times when I go into Handmaids and it's a tough scene, and we're going to have to work through it before we film it, and there's not going to be a ton of time.
Yeah.
But you have to say to yourself, I have all the time I need. Take a deep breath. Let's not make decisions based on fear. Let's see what makes sense, and just keeping kind of a level head about it.
What do you do if other actors are panicking about time, about them not getting something, and you're in that space where you're like, I have all the time in the world, but your partner, you can see, is just lost?
Well, we all go through it. So what you offer, I think, in that case is support. Whether it's spoken, or if I saw that in a scene we're working on and we're all struggling, I'd say, let's take a breath. The direction you're going in is so good. You just work through what's the issue. It's a collective issue, isn't it? It's not put on one person.
Right.
I think creating an atmosphere where something can come from it, and it will. But just again, to keep it open and fluid, and just, I've had support offered to me many times. It's just something I think we try to bring to the situation. The director is there, the writer is there.
Yeah.
We're all in this.
Yeah.
There's a way through.
What do you do when you get into real trouble and the director isn't helpful? Do you have a tried and true way to get out of trouble or get out of a hole? Do you know what I mean in general?
I should start by saying I've been very, very fortunate to work with wonderful directors, wonderful writers. We all have our part in solving the challenges. Again, what comes with age is being able to identify what is the issue. Am I having trouble making this transition because I haven't clarified in my head what it actually is? In which case I have to give that some thought. If there's something that could be helpful in the writing, respectfully you address the writer and say, no, what I find is missing, can you help me with that? And sometimes it's a question of the writer explaining, this is what I see. It's again, I have very rarely felt alone in a situation. Again, you know, you've done the homework before coming to set or to rehearsal. You know what your questions are, or where your issues might be, and you express them. And I think oftentimes between the director and the writer and one's own work, you can sort through it. That's been my experience quite a bit. I don't think you're ever actually alone in a situation. I'm sure there, and the other thing is not expecting every director or any director to solve all problems. Directors have strengths just like we do. And so working it through together without judgment, without placing blame on another. I've seen that too happen on sets where the anxiety or the whatever it is, the edge creeps in. And I think best not to just take a deep breath there, see if you can diffuse that and find a way to keep the story open and work through what the challenging parts are.
I've heard you say that you like Aunt Lydia, and when I heard that, I thought, well, there it is. That's it. That's the reason why I never see you twirling your mustache. Like there's never that ever for one moment in your performance. Do you know what I mean by that?
Well, yeah, I do. Well, I'm grateful for that because yeah.
But how important is it to? You've played some difficult people. How important is it to actually love them?
Well, I think it has to be a pretty strong love affair. Otherwise, the relationship, I don't know.
And you call it a love affair. You and the character.
I would say.
That's interesting.
I would say. That's what makes it sensational, because then the doors open. I mean, I've had the privilege of playing roles that are very well written. Lydia, Patty, you name it. And plus having, for instance, with Handmaids, the director, Reed Morano, of the first 3 episodes, was very helpful in opening that door of how much she loves those girls. It's just, again, the writing presented that. I was inclined there, but had the support of the director, who put that very clearly in place for me. It just got me off and running on the right foot, if you will. Regardless of her faults, Lydia, in her world, and when she goes to bed at night, her conscience says to her, you are doing the right thing. The world has gone to hell. Bruce Miller, our head writer, showrunner, suggested she was a teacher beforehand. And you can imagine her teaching either in an all-girls school or a public school. You can imagine her being made fun of and so on. And her, with her beliefs, I mean, she has a strong religious component there, obviously, watching the world fall apart, the promiscuity, the language, the dress, the way they dress, kids, nature destroyed, God's gift to us being destroyed, and the greatest gift of all, children, babies, decline. And I think she felt very strong measures had to be taken. Otherwise, what's going to happen? And these girls who've led a wayward life have a chance to have a meaningful life. And you're not going to love it, and you're not going to love what you're hearing and what's going on sometimes, but you will see in the end that this is for the best, for you and the world we live in.
Are you a religious person?
I'm not a religious person, but I have a strong spiritual life.
I grew up Catholic.
As did I.
Oh, okay. I'm still spiritual. I'm into like a radical theology, but there's still this base foundation in me. If I do this, God will be mad at me. That's still in my foundation. And I just want to know, and this is maybe not a thing you want to get into, and I would understand that. If that's in you, and you're able to lift it up, to play that, and you can put it back down, you know, when you're not playing it. Whereas if you weren't raised as a Catholic, you may not be able to call on that in the same way to play this character. Is that true?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of points you're raising here, and I don't know exactly why, because I did come from a religious family. It was very important, and is, to my mother, who is alive still. My father is not. two aunts who were Catholic sisters. I was educated by Catholic nuns. And for the most part, in a positive way. It never landed on me that, God-fearing punishment for your sins. Those rules and regulations, it occurred to me early on, were man-made, and by men, I think. And then women, certainly many. I've just finished a piece in which it talks about the early mother god that got completely destroyed and wiped out by men.
Yes.
That's a whole other thing, which is not what we're talking about here. But it didn't occur to me to take any of that as the truth. I love prayer. I think prayer. I don't pray in that traditional sense, but I love prayers. I'm very familiar with them, if you will, from my past. So her devotion is not unfamiliar to me. And even though I don't line up with her in terms of her beliefs, for the most part, I would say 90% of what she believes and does is not something I would choose to believe and do. However, it doesn't occur to me to judge her for it. I'm playing this role. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It doesn't present turmoil and conflict for me. There's a lot to her. One time in an interview, someone said, "Who hurt her?" Such a good question.
Yeah.
I do think, and this is generalizing, but I think if someone adheres to such a narrow point of view and clings to it for all she's worth, there's got to have been something that shut the doors tight. So I'm interested, and that, when you see someone who's been an enemy, let us say, or not an enemy, just someone you choose to have conflict with, and then you see them suffering in a profound way, and you realize, what am I doing? What am I doing?
I want to know what the set is like on Handmaid's Tale, and if it's in sync with what you need a set to be.
Oh, it's great. Fantastic crew, fantastic directors, cast. There's a camaraderie. There's an awareness that we have a full day ahead of us. There's humor regularly. There's kindness regularly. There's real affection. It's a terrific. And if you need a private moment, or you have that place to go. There's always a way to seek quiet if you need it. It's a very, very well run and very loving environment.
It seems like, I don't know, 80% of the scenes are on a level emotionally that you have to. I mean, I don't know how do you sustain the days and not break down?
Well, that's the thing. You have to. I mean, I will say that's very challenging. However, you rely on one another. You ask for the help you need. You do your part of preparation, and you trust that whatever you have on a given day will be enough. And some days are harder than others. The important thing is always to tell the story, take the pressure off, and say, hey, wait a second. Let's go back to basics. What do we need in this scene? What is this character doing here? What does she want? You would hope that she would go about it this way. That was your thought. Maybe today this is not going to work. Let's go to our second. You know what I'm saying? You just keep things fluid and open. And, Elizabeth Moss, who's wonderful, has she's there a lot. I have days of intensity and periods of intensity, but I also have breaks in between.
I watched Compliance again.
Oh, aren't you good?
Which I love.
I like it too.
I want to know what that was like. First of all, I want to know technically, like you're talking into a phone most of the time.
The actor was in another room talking to me.
And is that what we're hearing?
Yeah, although they may have
changed it a little bit, maybe, right?
No, they wouldn't have changed it. But you're hearing his voice. Oh yeah, absolutely.
That makes it
all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you have to play off of what he's saying.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
So
that
precisely.
was brilliant of Craig to
Yeah.
set that up that way.
Yeah. I'm watching it this time, though, because I knew I was going to talk to you. And I'm like, I want to see her acting. And I cannot see you acting. I can't find a moment where I can see you calculating what you're doing. How does that happen?
Well, the writing is really good. And it made sense to me that this woman who, for whatever reason, lost probably a very long time ago the inner compass that says this is okay and this isn't for me. I think, you can guess, but she has a boyfriend that's not suited to really. You can imagine she lives with her father, probably told from the very beginning, nothing you say or do is that important. First of all, you're a girl, and secondly, you're not very pretty, and third, you're kind of chubby, and so, you know what? And buried long ago was that voice that said, I can make my own decisions about this, because if that had been a lie for her, she would have said, I'm running a restaurant here, I understand there's problems, but you're the detective, you're gonna have to get down here and figure it out, I can't do this. But it never occurred to her that, that just because he says he's a detective, one, that he is, and secondly, that you have to do what he says. It just didn't get in there. And so he says, I can take her down and do a strip search, but I think this is going to be easier for her if, she does it with two women that she knows. And I think that just went through Sandra's brain. Yeah, that's true. Okay, it's unpleasant, but hey, certainly that's better than taking her down there. Do you know what I mean? It just was a series of decisions that made sense, simply. Not a lot of, well, should I, shouldn't I? The master of this man was that he was a brilliant manipulator, and he could read human beings and their weaknesses extremely well, and just knew when to introduce this part of it, when to compliment her, when to say, hey, I told you, don't mention it to so-and-so, and you did. Okay, failure, I know that. I know what okay, sorry, I'm terribly sorry. You're doing very well. I could hire you as an assistant. Well, thank you. Praise. But I don't know the answer to your question, except, like anything, staying in the moment. And how do you stay in the moment? You stay involved with the task at hand, which is, let's get through this. Let's get, take the clothes off. I don't have a choice in this, neither do you, and let's get on with it.
How do you stay in the moment? I can understand staying in the moment, take one. How do you stay in the moment, take four?
Well, that's the training, isn't it? Take a deep breath, because you stay connected to the one thing at a time. You don't anticipate, you don't jump ahead. That's how you do 8 shows a week. You're not always successful, trust me. But you just remind yourself, okay, what are we doing? Let's start again. And then things, when you do your first take, when you're starting a scene, and you resist the urge to say, oh, fuck, that's terrible. Because you say, okay, we've got more takes. We're going to understand and do that. We're going to learn what's the best way here.
What do you do to feed your inner actor?
I guess appreciate life, basically, and pay attention in life. I would say to young actors, keep reading. Read a play, easily a play every 2 plays a week. Stay with your monologues, because on the times you're not working, go in your bedroom, shut the door, and do some work. Keep the flame alive, keep the love story alive, because that's what sustains you in the end. It's wonderful to play a character. It's a great, great adventure. Stay attached to that. There's so much social media, so much celebrity, all of it. None of it relevant to the work, really. It's harder on the younger generation because it's all around them. They grew up with it. I don't know how people have time for that. I don't understand it. So I'm not attracted to it. I don't want to know what people are saying about me, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. I don't want to comment. I don't know. I just say keep it simple. Put the phone away. Put it down. Pay attention. The gratitude factor is huge. I don't think it's hard to keep it alive, quite honestly. I think, as you come up in your career, it's very important. I can say this, in the earlier for most years of my career, each job was a triumph. Getting that job, being cast, having time with that role, sometimes having it go well, other times wishing it had gone better. But the point is, always the work was the attraction. And that I have the extraordinary good fortune of these roles now. It's a dream come true, really. Dream come true. And staying deeply positive. Deeply positive. It's all possible. There's room at the table for all of us.
What was it like for you to have this notoriety happen now in your
It's wonderful.
career?
It's wonderful. I think younger it might have been a distraction, might have certainly thrown me off, or, you know, when you're raised Catholic and the notion is it shouldn't be about you, focus is not on you, focus is on others. It's a very conflicting thing when you begin to get attention for your work.
Yes.
The feelings of guilt rise up.
Yeah.
Am I this? Those are very distracting things. And now being older, you realize, okay, let's just stick to the work. Let this go by, that go by, it'll all pass by. That's quite wonderful.
Is there something that you want to do that you're not getting the opportunity to do right now that you wish you had the opportunity to do work-wise?
Well, I'm very fortunate that I have the schedule that I have, which is to say I have some time off now before we begin season 3, which is important for my family, things of that sort. I always loved teaching, and I'm not able to now with my schedule, which is, I'm not complaining because how lucky am I. But I did love that, and I hope to do it again. It's, you know, as you get older and you learn certain things that you would love to teach young actors, aside from the basic skills required, but just the notion, it's all okay. Just find some quiet in your life. Silence is huge. Anyway, but to answer your question, I look forward to doing some more teaching, and I love the roles that are coming. They're exciting and challenging and strange and wonderful.
That's great.
Yeah, very, 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 very fortunate. That's how I feel.
Ann Dowd, thank you. So
My
much
pleasure.
for
I don't know that I gave you what you were interested in, but
you did. You
but,
certainly did.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project.